Good morning. This is the Innovation Conversation. How you doing, Tom?
Good, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing
All
great.
right.
So, first thing I wanted to talk about today, and we had this story on Morning News Beat last week, was this open letter to Amazon CEO Andy Jassy from a Bernstein analyst named Mark Shmulik. Shmulik? I hope I'm saying that right. Shmulik? Anyway, they described it as a brutal open letter in which they were trying to talk about all the things that they felt Amazon should do. And the quote was, one of the quotes was, "We fully support Amazon's efforts to uncover and capture the next AWS-sized opportunity. But what we've seen recently is a company simply pursuing too many ideas, with weaker ideas taking away the oxygen, capital, and most importantly, focus from the truly disruptive initiatives that only Amazon can do." I know you read the letter.
Yeah.
First reaction to it.
Well, I think he's right. Right. It's not only what should Amazon do, but what should they not do, right?
Right.
And I think and I also think it's probably likely something that they're wrestling with internally as well. Particularly as they look to reduce their cost structure, right? They let a lot of people go. They had hired pretty aggressively over the last bunch of years, and as you hire, particularly at Amazon, where folks are charged with innovation, right? You end up with this massive amount of innovation, or at least attempts at innovation happening, which can ultimately dilute the overall company's focus on it. It gets harder to do that. So I think there's a lot of merit in that. Pick fewer spots, and invest in those, and pick what's most strategic. Invest in those. If it's not strategic or you don't think you have a chance, get out of it. That's a little bit more of a questionable one, because I think he even told them to kind of make a call on grocery, right? And I think that's a key market for Amazon ultimately to get right.
Well,
but it's a tough, because it's a little bit of a double-edged sword in that, yes, you really need to be a little bit more careful and calculated in your bets as you get bigger, so you don't go overboard. But you can't lose that innovative culture that you have, because that's ultimately what's going to carry you through the next decades, is that innovation and bring your business forward through those.
And I want to get back to that question in a second, but for the record, some of the recommendations were: divest, seek outside funding, or trim your spend across healthcare and Project Kuiper. Kuiper is the one with all the satellites.
The low,
that would give everybody who doesn't have access to high-speed internet, which you think would be kind of important if you're a company that depends on high-speed internet for so much of what it does. Okay.
Yeah.
Exit underwater international markets. They have no incumbency advantage in markets like Brazil, Mexico, and Singapore. They continue to lose money in India. The question he asks, is it worth continuing to fight for second or even third place in a foreign market? 3, make a call on physical grocery once and for all. 4, double down on buy with Prime. And 5, continue to build out Amazon Media into the next great media property by growing its array of services, including original content, theatrical, and live sports, among other things. I have to say, I'm fascinated by the idea that he would recommend, in essence, well, maybe you need to get out of grocery, but maybe you ought to spend more money on movies.
Right.
And as a movie guy, I'm not even sure I agree with that, because I'm not sure that everything they do is very good. But that's right. We'll put that aside for a second.
Yeah.
So, but it seems to me, in reading the letter and sort of also taking some of the implications from it, what he's really focusing on at some level is, here are the things you need to do to become more financially stable. Admittedly, a good thing to do. And to drive up share price, right? Mm-hmm. And therefore, but I'm not sure when I read the letter that he's thinking as strategically as I think traditionally Amazon has, right? My big criticism about Amazon lately has been that they're not connecting the dots enough.
Yeah.
Right. And Amazon's traditionally thing is, hey, we don't need to make money on this because it feeds this other thing.
Yeah.
And we need to look at the whole. We need not, the whole thing about, you've always talked about Bezos saying, hey, listen, I'm not worried about this quarter. I'm thinking 4 or 5 quarters out.
Yeah.
Am I wrong in thinking that as legitimate as a lot of his observations and recommendations are, they are not necessarily in sync with the way that Amazon has traditionally thought about strategic thinking?
Yeah, I mean, back 23 to 25 years ago, there was that handwritten Amazon flywheel, right? We've all seen it. And it's how these elements of the business work together to create this customer flywheel that feeds itself and it speeds up and it creates this deeper customer engagement with more spending, more value, right? Lower cost structure, kind of all that, driving that. And, I think we're at later chapters now and still feeding very much the same kind of flywheel, more sophisticated and more expensive programs that do that and capabilities that do that. But I think they have to be mindful of that. And I would really hope and expect, frankly, internally, that as they're investing in these innovations, that they are thinking about how they come together and drive each other. And yeah, you don't have to, there's not a consistent profit hurdle across all of the initiatives that you take on, right? Some you'll be willing to operate at a small profit, some you'll be willing to break even. Some may be okay at a small loss as long as that loss is relatively contained and you're able to attribute value that it generates in advance, in excess of that loss. So, I just think, pick and I don't necessarily agree with that half dozen or whatever items it was. I mean, I think, yeah, it makes sense. Go in international markets, that 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, and 8th, and 9th, and 10th international market that you're losing money in. Do you need to be in that? And what is the importance of being in that? And if you're, how does that drive your overall value better? Or, do you have a chance of getting there? There's probably key strategic markets like India, just given the massive size of it, that maybe being 3rd in India is just fine. I'm not sure. So, it seems like there's some, rationale there for that. But I think bailing on grocery, or I guess he didn't say bail on it. He said make a decision on it.
Right.
Right. I think their decision thus far is that they want to be good at it. They want it to be a part of their formula. I think that decision they've demonstrated that as their decision, even as they pull back on certain elements of the investment. You still hear Jassy saying, we believe the model's out there to be found, and we're going to continue searching for it.
Yeah. I mean, I've always thought that part of the problem they have with grocery, I mean, beyond the whole connecting the dots thing, is they never seem to have the right person running it, right? The person who just had a total, I mean, and what they really needed was somebody who was both visionary, had vision on their own, was willing to surround himself or herself with even smarter people in terms of technology, but somebody also who really knew the grocery business, right? And you and I could probably come up with 6 names pretty easily of people, men and women, who might fit that bill.
Yeah, or at least fit parts of it. I think it's easier to. It's not easier. I think that we've said in the past, it's kind of a bit of a unicorn,
right?
That ultimately, is the right fit for leading that Amazon grocery business, because you do have to have a lot of the understanding of the art of merchandising and the art of running good stores and in creating inviting experiences that customers covet. That is that can often be a very different skill set than what's required to write the Amazon 6-pager and defend, the economics of your business,
right?
Or ultimately build out the economics of your business inside the environment that is Amazon.
Right.
And so that's, I think the person's out there.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a challenging kind of set of characteristics you have to bring together to get that right.
Yeah. one of the
That's part, actually, just sorry, that's probably part of why, Whole Foods culture never really melded in well with Amazon. It's just different wiring,
right.
different DNA.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. One of the things he does talk about is they need to come up with more consistent messaging. I mean, he talks about the investor community, and I would totally agree with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think they even need to come up with more consistent messaging for customers. I think that they throw so much different stuff at us as customers
Yeah.
that sometimes we're, we're aware that they're ubiquitous, but we're aware of the pieces more than how they fit together, which comes back to my connecting the dots thing. But also, I mean, it's fascinating. The Amazon stock price is actually up 45% this year. I mean,
Yeah, after being
down
ridiculously
50%.
down.
Down
Yeah.
50, but if
And it
it's
still outperformed, or still underperformed most of those, comparable tech companies. But
yeah,
it's definitely been climbing.
and
Back in
seems
the
to be
day.
recovering some of the much of the losses that it suffered.
Yeah, I think it's probably recovered maybe about a third or about third to half of the total loss
Right.
from its peak. Because I think it was over 2 trillion in market cap. It's like at 1.3 now.
Yeah.
So, still down pretty good from where they were. It used to be back in the day, Amazon was clearly about selection, price, and convenience
Right.
as an online retailer. That was a value proposition that they delivered on, right? You got the product when you said you were going to get it. Now, it used to be Super Saver shipping 7 to 10 days, right? Then it became Prime, 2 to 3 days. And then, of course, the promise has gotten better over time. They've always been good about having selection, going on and finding what you want, in the e-com business. And their prices have generally been good.
Yeah.
So they've delivered well on that. But, as you seek to become more, it's harder to keep that promise clear to customers.
Yeah.
And I do agree they could be, a lot better at that customer communication, and it all has to do with Prime, right? And everything you get for Prime in the various elements there. But ultimately, as you start thinking about things like healthcare, like that, get out of healthcare. I get it. It's not the core business of retail. It's not the core business of AWS. They do a lot of tech and data and AI support services for healthcare in AWS.
Right.
So they're building up a lot of really robust capabilities that could be applied for them. And we know that folks in their nutrition, wellness, well-being, and management of their own health, it is closely affiliated with your retail buying. And you obviously see the chain drugstores and a lot of the mass merchants and some of the grocery merchants, definitely seeing whole health as being critical, to their engagement with customers. It does make sense for Amazon to pursue that, and they should have a chance at being pretty good at it. So I think you got to be careful at how you invest there, but I think it would, I can't imagine they're going to bail from healthcare at this time.
Yeah. No. They've bought so many things and started so many things that they've gotten rid of, but they keep buying. I mean, One Medical was the third.
Well, you commented on One Medical that nowhere in your experience did it mention
Amazon,
or did it? Yeah.
Yeah, which is fascinating. I'll tell you, there is a One Medical office going in about a mile and a half from my house. It's gonna be right across the parking lot from an apartment building where my daughter's moving in. I'll be fascinated to see, and it hasn't opened yet. And then there's another one going in a town about 2.5, 3 miles away. So it'll be interesting to see the degree to which they market it. I'll be fascinated to see how that kind of plays out.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when you talk about building the value of Prime. The other story we had the last few days was the idea that Amazon is now thinking about creating a pay tier for Amazon Prime Video. And I don't know what quite to make of it. Sometimes, I mean, the phrase I used on the site was, sometimes it feels like Andy Jassy's going through the couch cushions, looking for spare change. But it seems to me that, I mean, again, the whole idea about all these different offerings on Prime is, we're going to add value because if people are Prime members, they're going to spend twice as much money buying product. and then creating a different video. Talk about
I get
complicated,
it.
and how they're going to message that is beyond me. And I mean, I understand why Netflix did it.
That's their business.
Right. But
Yeah.
it's when does Amazon follow Netflix? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Amazon's video business it plays a different role than Netflix. When it's your prime revenue line,
Or
primary revenue line.
or HBO Max, now Max, or Paramount
Yeah,
Plus, or any
right.
of those guys.
That's their business, and that makes
Totally.
sense to have the tiers.
Yes.
Amazon, I don't know how you offer a less expensive tier that includes ads, or maybe the current tier will include ads, and they're going to develop a more premium tier.
Right.
That additional pay for that could potentially make sense.
Right.
Versus sliding one in below their current level. But frankly, I mean, you could see them adding some additional advertising in the Prime Video business today and not degrading the customer experience, right? You can't pepper it with ads.
Right.
But, there's probably a way to tastefully add, some advertisements to it. And that all kind of within the vein of this enables us to reduce the cost of the service and keep the cost reasonable for you. And then maybe that's the way they're going to do it. And then if you want to opt out of these ads, it's $5.99 a month or $9.99 a month.
They've already got Freevee. They're doing original production for Freevee, which is ad supported.
Right.
And I'll tell you, because there's a couple of programs I'll watch on Freevee, it's annoying. I'm used to watching Amazon and not having ads. And I listen, if they said, listen, we're going to go tomorrow and it's $139 a year, but if you want to be Amazon Prime Gold Prime, it's $169 a year. Say hi to your dog.
There's somebody at the door, but I'll just let him go out there and bark. And he'll be entertaining for everyone. Hi, bud. Good to see you. All right, he'll be barking in the foyer. Hopefully, it won't be too bad. I'll mute when I'm not.
That's okay.
When I'm not talking.
That's all right. But I'd probably sign up for that if it would depend. And by the way, they could actually integrate a Prime, maybe some of the medical stuff into Prime Gold. I mean, there's an opportunity to do something really what if they decided to say, we're going to have Prime Gold, we're going to have, that's going to include medical. It's going to include cell phone service. I mean, there's a bunch of things they could do.
Well, I think that's the thought, right? Is that they do create, this suite of services that is complementary that, continues to add additional value to Prime. That makes a ton of sense.
Right.
To me.
So,
and is ultimately hard to compete with for other retailers. Other retailers can add pieces of it.
Right.
But, to add something, that comprehensive, it's tougher for a traditional retailer to get into that kind of stuff.
So we have a story on Morning Newsbeat today. We'll finish up with this. Axios has a story about how, their headline is Walmart's on the cusp of weakening Amazon's edge in online shopping and shipping. And they sort of lay the whole thing out and especially how it's Walmart's able to do it by connecting so much, making the store network, creating the kind of the interconnectivity. But when I hear that, I think it's still Amazon. To me, it's still Amazon's to lose, as long as they don't try to be too much like Netflix, too much like Walmart, too much like the other, right? They've got the unique pieces. They've got the differentiation. It's where they say, it may, again, to go back to the other thing, it makes no sense to kind of undercut its own Prime offering with a lower value. No, be bold, be disruptive. Don't try to be what everybody else is trying to be.
Absolutely. And don't be, you're not trying to be, sorry about the dog. You don't need to be super premium. You just need to provide, that right range of services that's valuable to customers and valuable together. And Walmart is making tremendous strides right now in both their core e-com business and their advertising business. And, Amazon is still, volume of e-commerce, they're still almost a 50% of total e-commerce share. So they're massive. Their media or their ad network is like a 70 or 75% or 80% share of total ads. So they're massive there. So there's plenty of ground that Walmart would have to make up. But if Amazon doesn't get grocery right over time, That will be what enables, we have some exterminators outside. That'll be ultimately what enables Walmart to catch them.
Yeah, right. It's Amazon's to lose, but the wrong way to win is to is to be any less bold. Maybe they have to be more surgically bold, but to be any less bold than
Oh yeah, I think to retreat would be to retreat, and to retreat in the eyes of of your customer base would be terrible.
Right. And as you always say, at the core of it, and this is the lesson for everybody who's watching, as long as you're focused on the customer experience and improving the customer experience at every step of the way, as opposed to nickel and diming people and trying to figure out this other stuff, you're going to be okay. I mean, you're going to be able to continue to grow. Maybe not at the pace that you used to grow, certainly not at the pace during the pandemic, but you'll continue to sort of set the bar. And as long as they're setting the bar as opposed to trying to be what other people are being a little bit, that strikes me, that would be the wrong way to go.
I think, yeah, just offering bits more on the margin, which is what most retailers do. That's not, I mean, yeah, you might retain some of your customers, but you're not really bringing your customers new value. You're not bringing them to new places. You're not changing the game for them. And I just think retailers can't lose sight of that. And Amazon certainly can't. I mean, continue to be bold in how you innovate. Keep that customer at the very center of how you think about it. You can't go wrong. And I will say that, Amazon has probably lost a little bit of that, as they've massively broadened the areas that they're innovating in. It's kind of natural to, to lose that edge and to lose a bit of that customer centricity. And that's what leadership's all about. So Jassy and, the rest of the leadership team have to keep that focus, and they have to keep the company focused on it.
All right. Well, thank you as always. Always great to see you. These are, I always think in these conversations, the only way I would prefer them to the way we do them now would be A, if we were in the same room, B, if that room had a bar in it.
Oh yeah.
And C, we could do it for hours as opposed to just.
Well, I'm sure there will be an opportunity upcoming at an industry event or otherwise where we can do so.
All right. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everyone.